starting point, a midpoint, and an end point. I use this a lot on electrical drawings when I'm trying to draw a circuit line from a switch to a line. You know the starting point, end point, and afterwards you can go back and adjust the radius of that arc if you need to. But it's start, middle, and end on that one. Now, if we look at start, center, and end, what that means is you're picking them in that order. Arcs are typically drawn counterclockwise. So if I wanted to draw this arc, that would be counterclockwise. If I wanted to draw an arc here, this would be start, center, end. But that can also change. So I'm going to pick my center point. No, it says start. So here's a start, center, and end. I mean, pretty basic. And then I've got to go back up and re-click it. So you do start, center.
Click polygon.
I did that. All right, try that again. Center. Now, if you'll look at the prompt, it says hold Control to switch direction. So if you don't want to go counterclockwise, you can hold down your Control key and force it to go clockwise. So you really have control over which direction you draw the arc. And the rest of them are pretty much similar. So if I do start, end, I want start, end, and direction. So for example, this one I could do starting point, end point, and then direction. If you want a full half circle, the angle is 90 degrees. Or you could do 270. I may use that one some as well. You also have start, end, and radius. So we do starting point, ending point, and then a radius, if you know what the radius is. And that one you've got to type in. That one's a little different. On page 8-2, there's a graphic that shows you the different terminology where it talks about the length. The length is the chord length. It's the distance from the starting point and the end point. I use that when I'm doing plot plans where I'm inputting circular information on a plot or a plat drawing where you've got these curves. You've got a street with a 500-foot radius. So I'll use that a lot for those. Start, center, start, and angle. I don't use that one quite often. Start, center, and angle. So basically, you get an angle, but I have to pick the center point first. And then you pick the starting point. I mean, that's very similar to that start, end, and then you can hold down your Control key and go the other direction. And like I tell my students, instead of fighting with this, if it's easier to draw a circle, draw a circle. Also, the arc has a continuation option just like the line command. So if I start the arc command, I can draw an arc. If I hit enter twice, basically repeat the command and restart it, it will continue where you left off. So it has this built-in continuation option. Now, the line and the arc works together with that continuation option. So if I draw a line and then I start the arc command, it will continue where I left off. Then I can start the line command, hit enter, and it will continue where the arc left off. So if I wanted to line these up, I could. That's where that tracking comes in. You can line those up. And then I can start the arc command again, continue with that line, and actually draw a slot. So they work together. They both have a continuation feature, and I use this quite a bit. Okay. Questions on drawing arcs? Like I said, for my use, the start, center, end method typically works for almost everything I need to do. But when you look at these options, really all they are is different techniques, basically based on picking options. Down here on the command line, but the menu just actually has those features embedded in it. On page 8.6, drawing polylines. And we could actually use this drawing to, well actually no, let's start a new drawing for the polyline command. Up here on your drawing tabs, just click on that plus sign, and that will start a new drawing. That wasn't what I wanted. Remember yesterday when I said AutoCAD will remember the last template you open up? That's exactly what happened. So I'm going to start a new one based on ACAD named plot styles. Now, anytime I click on new, it should remember that. I think that last part we were looking at is really small. A polyline is what AutoCAD calls a complex object made up of lines and arc segments joined together. AutoCAD has several commands that create shapes out of polylines. One of them is the rectangle command. The other one is the polygon command, which we'll look at later. And then the third one is the donut command. These commands create these shapes out of a polyline. There's no such object in AutoCAD called a donut. It's actually a polyline. The donut is just a shape that we create. So if you start your polyline command, the basic way to use it is just to start out using it just like the line command. You just pick points. And then when you're done, it's a single object. I'm going to get closer down here to my command line where you can see that. So you pick a starting point, and then you have all of these other options. I can switch to art mode. I can specify the width. So if I wanted to change the width of my polyline, I can go down to width. And let me see how long my line is. I'm going to change it to 1 inch, ending width 1 inch. So now I have a polyline that's 1 inch wide. Now think about your shop. Do you have like these yellow colored lines on the floor, about 2-3 inches wide? Let's say you wanted to draw those on a drawing and you want them actually to be 3 inches wide. This is how you would do that. Create a polyline and you'll have those wide lines because AutoCAD has line weight. This is different than line weight. This is an actual 2-inch line or a 1/2 inch line. So when you print it on your drawing, it will be to scale. Now, whenever you're drawing polylines, the ending width and the starting width can be different. So I could actually have tapers on each one of these segments. I could also switch to art mode and draw arcs. And then I could do close, and that will close off that segment. Now that's a single object. One of the unique features about polylines is it has area and perimeter. I want you to press Control 1, which turns on properties. If you select that polyline, over in properties, it's going to tell you the length of the line and the area. If these were line segments, according to AutoCAD, it does not have an area. And you know an enclosed box has area, but the object itself does not have area. So if you're in facilities and you need to calculate the area of a shop or an area, typically what we do is we draw a polyline around that area. Put that on a layer, and then we can actually use that object to get that information. So let's do some weird things with polylines. Let me get this off to the side here. So if I start the polyline command, I could go in and change my width. I could say I want to start at 1 inch, end at 5 inches. Well, I want 5 to 10. So now I can have a polyline that's 5 inches to 10 inches. So let's say you needed to create a large arrow on the floor. Let's say like a turn arrow on a highway. You can do that with the polyline command by manipulating the width option. So I could go into my polyline, and I'm going to set my width to 1. And then I could go into my arc option, go into an arc. Then I could change my width to 3, ending with the 0, and create, I'm going to change that to a line. So you could create an arrow. So you have full control over that object. So let's say you wanted the first part of this to be a little wider down here. Whenever you click on a polyline, with properties turned on, you have this section called current vertex. If I click on that option, you'll see a little X over here. Okay, I'm at vertex 1. The starting width is 1, the ending width is 1. Well, I want to change that. I want the starting width to be 2. So now you can change that, and you can say I want the ending width to be 2 as well. And then I can go up here to vertex 2, click on the up arrow, and now I'm at vertex 2, and so I want that to start at 2 as well. So you can go in individually and control the thickness of the starting and ending vertex. These aren't typical drawings that you're going to, or typical objects that you're going to be drawing all the time. But there's times you need big arrows, and AutoCAD just does not have them. You have to draw them. I mean, if you use the leader tool, you get a nice little thin dimension leader, but nothing fancy or anything. Questions about polylines? Oh, and you can select a polyline, and in properties there is an option that says global width. If you want to reset that all to 0, you could do that. And it looks just like that. Now I want you to draw a rectangle. This is probably the easiest way to demonstrate this. Go up and draw a rectangle. And like I said, that rectangle is a polyline. It has grips. One of the nice things about now that we have with the grips on polylines, you can hover over any of the midpoint grips and convert that segment to an arc, or you can add a vertex. So in one of the exercises, they're going to have you draw a rectangle, explode it, and remove the two sidelines and draw arcs. You don't have to do that. You can come over here and say convert to arc. And just like that, you've got arcs. There's no reason to explode it into lines and then delete the lines when you can do that. Now, if you're, does anyone have to manage square footage on a drawing for a facility? Let's say you've got a building, and I'm just gonna randomly make it look more like a tic-tac-toe board. But let's say that this department has 1 square foot. Then all of a sudden, you have to add this area, so now they own these 3 departments. In the past, what we'd have to do is explode that polyline, draw other ones, join them together. So now we can go in and edit the polyline, and I'm just going to use a rectangle to demonstrate this. I can click on the rectangle and say add vertex, come over here and add a vertex, add another vertex, add vertex, and basically redraw the shape without having to explode it. And you're probably saying, what does that matter if I explode it? Well, some companies will actually use fields, which we will get into. I can use it's called a field object. If I could type this morning. And with fields, I can come in and extract data from an object. So let's say I wanted to know the area of that object. You can't see that, so I'm going to scale it up. 1.6 square feet. Now if I explode that, I'll lose that information. So if I type in regen, it doesn't know what that is. So a lot of companies will create these polylines, and then in a table or with notes, they'll say, this section, Division 1, has 1,800 square feet. But, if they come in and, well, let me undo that. Oh, I got to do an undo. There we go. So if they come in and decide, okay, we want this area too, regenerate the drawing, it updates the area. So there's times you don't want to explode those. Because if someone has all of these nice fields and calculations and you go in and explode them, you're going to have one angry person. Because they just spend a lot of time getting all of that data. I always create a layer called like area calculations, do not delete. I even lock it sometimes. But that's one of the reasons, and that's the benefit of using these grips to edit the polylines. All right, let's do this. Use your line command. Just go up to your line command and draw, let's say, a polygon shape. I want all the endpoints to connect. That object does not have